This is Highway 400 across Bradford Marsh, 10,000 years ago, in the Ice Age. And if you know your onions, you'll know that Bradford Marsh means muck, M-U-C-K, black magic. This is Highway 400 as it crosses Bradford Marsh today. Some call it Holland Marsh after the man who first surveyed it, an Englishman named Holland. Onions, lettuce, carrots, celery, salads, and potatoes, they all grow here. A 6,000-acre vegetable garden just outside Toronto. This is the ugly, beautiful fact in Bradford Marsh. Science calls it organic soil. But for nearly 50 years, local farmers have called it beautiful. Deep black muck producing more than $14 million worth of food every year. And that ain't hay.
Marsh hay was a type of grass that used to grow, acres and acres and acres of it, all over the marsh.
We used to bale an awful lot of marsh hay in the marsh. In the early days, we used horse. We used to have to put wooden boots on the horses that they wouldn't get stuck in the muck.
In the fall, they used to cut it and use it for filling mattresses. I think there was an outfit in Bradford used to do it commercially.
Most of it would be hauled down the river in barges. We supplied Eaton's, Simpson's, various utensil places for packing purposes.
But once it's plowed under, it never seems to come back again.
This more or less went out of existence when all our marsh was drained for the production of marsh vegetables.
The marsh is a living, growing classroom. You can taste it, fresh too, from April to October. They come from all over the province, indeed from throughout Canada, learning the latest farming techniques or just that salads don't grow in cellophane bags.
Well, you picked a pretty nice day anyway. Welcome to the research station for organic soils in the province of Ontario. We call this the Muck Research Station. It's operated by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food as a service to the growers. And a major job that we do here is to try different varieties of these crops like carrots, lettuce, celery, onions, and so on. We've got over 100 different varieties of onions here now being tried. Another thing we do here is to try various chemicals to control weeds, herbicides. Also control of insects and diseases.
Well, the farmers are spraying nowadays to control the diseases and also for controlling of insects. And in order to reduce the amount of chemicals applied here to the crops, we like to monitor the diseases in the crops, when they land on the leaves, how they grow on the leaves, when they infect the leaves. What we're essentially doing is monitoring the whole life cycle of the fungus. We monitor the release of spores, how many spores there are in the air each hour of the day, and we do that with a spore trap. We count the number of spores in each hour. And then also, we want to know when the leaves are going to be infected. So we have to know how long the leaves are wet and what is the temperature during the wet period. We collect all those data and analyze them, and then we tell the farmers when it is time to spray.
I'd like to know the acreage, I suppose, the whole acreage of cultivated acreage in this marsh, about 6,000 acres of this black soil. All it is it's dead vegetation, you know. It's the remains of bulrushes, sedges, cattails, mosses, and so on. It's been growing here at a very high water table for many, many years. This Holland Marsh, of course, years ago was underwater pretty well. Matter of fact, about 10,000 years ago, when the glacier pulled back here, the water stayed here because it couldn't get out. And this is how marshes are formed. Now, when we pump the water off, then we have a reverse process, and this is the thing that you have to keep in mind as well. But as soon as we cultivate it and let the water table go down, in about 10 years we lose that foot again. It just decomposes, it oxidizes. So this is a phenomenon of all marshes that have been developed anywhere in the world. They're all disappearing at that rate of a foot.
Disappearing? Scientists say yes, and that it may all be gone in 50 years. Unless perhaps youngsters such as these find the answers. In research laboratories, the marsh itself. Or even here in the tiny Dutch village of Ansnerveld, where the first Dutch families settled. Today, half a century later, 99% of marsh farming is still a family affair. This irrigation canal is 17.5 miles long. The water level is 6 feet higher than the marsh it surrounds, just like back in Holland. The marsh is saved from flooding by 5 giant electric pumps which draw off excess water and force it up into the canal. When the spring rains are over and the first students come like robins along the canal, the routine of a marsh farmer begins.
Well, we generally plow in the spring or cultivate, which lifts up quite a few stumps or roots, whatever you want to call them. And we generally call it picking up wood. That's just about the size of it. On one end of the land, there's not a piece of wood to be found, but you get down where there was a bush prior to when we plowed it, and you run into the wood. We've been at it for 30 years, and they still keep coming up.
Everybody seems to think that the marsh soil is pretty productive, and it is, but it needs quite a bit of fertilizer or food matter to help the crops grow fairly good. And I would say we need quite a bit more fertilizer on the marsh here than on a highland farm, for instance. Each crop takes out a certain amount of nutritional value out of the field, and that has to be replaced each year. We generally spread fertilizer in the springtime just before the crops are planted. Generally speaking, about 1,000, 1,200 pounds per acre, sometimes maybe 800 pounds. That particular field probably took me an hour.
It was all done by a wheel hoe. You do a single row. And then they got into these garden tractors. You drove them by hand. And it was, some were 2 rows, 3 rows. A real big one, that was 4 rows. But that was the sort of the coming of the mechanization. Well, you don't get into something like this overnight. And you just slowly get involved more and more and more, and there's actually no way that you can just get out. That's my way of looking at it. It just doesn't come overnight. You buy this, you buy that, and the first thing you know, you've accumulated a lot of equipment, and it's mostly all specialized equipment, and you're stuck with it. And you just keep using it year after year. In a few years, you might as well say it's junk to try to sell it. But yet you've got an awful lot of money tied up in it.
I believe in '63 or '64 was one of the worst that we've had, and you could see the wind carrying the soil up as high as a mile. A serious windstorm, it'll pick up the fertilizer along with the seed. It'll bank up like snowbanks. The serious thing is the ditches. They have to clean the ditches all back out. We're starting our plants today in glass houses, in boxes, box plants. In those days, there was no such thing. It was just from seed, from the field. We didn't even have hotbeds.
It's early morning and late night. Nobody figure them out how much we work. Nobody can figure them out. Doesn't matter raining or cold weather or in the fall time snowing, or we still go. And somebody don't like it, you know. We can do so much, you know, for my age, and what time we came here and doesn't understand for in the language, and you know, we start here and you know, got an experience and go and go and go.
So you go, day in and day out, right through July, and all the time you need 3 eyes. One for the bugs and diseases, one for rain, and one for sunshine. If you get too much rain, all you can do is smile. If it's too dry, you can pump water from the canal and irrigate.
Salad days originated several years ago through the Rotary Club in conjunction with the marsh and the ethnic background on the marsh. And the idea was to have a family social event at this particular time of the year.
The food is provided by marsh gardeners and prepared by the wives of the gardeners and wives of Rotarians and other ladies in town who have given us a tremendous amount of help. The meal consists of cold meats, a variety of meats, and freshly prepared vegetables from marsh vegetables, and coffee and dessert. The meal is one of the main attractions of the evening. We start off with the meal, which is for the children as well as the adults. And it's quite early in the evening and is over by 7 o'clock, so we can get on with the entertainment. It's a day which we hope appeals to people from a real cross-section of the people from the area. We get many, many people from the town and the surrounding area supporting it. The entertainment is put on by different musical groups of different ethnic backgrounds, Ukrainian, German, Slovakian, people from Bradford, the Holland Marsh, Newmarket, and communities more distant.
Well, harvesting onions, when we first started, you used to have to pull them out by hand, lay them in single rows with the tops all one way. Then you let them dry there for a week or so. Then you went along with a pair of sheep shears and cut the tops off them.
The machine doesn't go that fast. It looks fast. We run about maybe a mile and a half an hour down the field, so it's not that fast. And those onions are real hard. They're solid onions. They don't bruise that easy. There's varieties we used to have years ago that would bruise, but these don't. The fellows we had on the machine there, they're both from Jamaica, and you need some help. I've had local help. My family helps. And for this, we just need the four of us to harvest the whole field. The biggest crop would be carrots, I imagine, but onions are the second largest. I think there's between, on average year, about 24 to 2,800 acres of onions grown on the Bradford Marsh. For harvesting onions, we run about 10 hours a day. Sometimes, if we're really pressed for time, we'd run a couple hours at night, but we don't have to now.
Well, really, with the exception of mechanization, celery hasn't changed too much over the years, except for variety and one thing and another like that.
Well, we have a mechanical harvester which does it all automatically. Something in the same principle as a carrot combine with belts. Picks up the stalks, and the top of the stalks are cut by means of a rotating knife. It seems to be that when you do go faster, the more stalks that come off the end of the belt at the same time seems to have a cushioning effect. Each stalk seems to cushion the other one as it falls. Like any harvester, it takes a few hours to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's no more difficult, I don't think, than a carrot combine.
When it comes off the field, it gets unloaded off these bulk wagons. In the plant itself, all they do down there is just pull the suckers off. Some of the butts that didn't get knocked off with the machine are cut off out there. That's all local help from Bradford. They're Portuguese women. They've been with us for quite a few years now. And there's a sprinkler in there that we just wet it down to keep it fresh before it goes into the cooler. Just, you know, to give the canners a fresh product. I guess we could put about 3 trailer loads a day if we pushed it.
The lettuce season starts here approximately the middle of June. And as the crop progresses, more volume available, the vacuum plant is opened or becomes operative. The lettuce is inspected before it goes into the vacuum tube. Mainly they are looking for decay. Soft lettuce is not wanted. This ensures that the dealers are not spending money to have poor quality lettuce vacuum cooled and then find out 3 or 4 hours later at shipping time the lettuce does not meet inspection or does not meet grade. Now the vacuum process removes the heat from the lettuce in roughly 20 minutes down to 35 degrees. If it does not get below 38 degrees, we do not consider it vacuum cooled. And of course, anything below 32 degrees would be frozen or have frost damage. The same lettuce put into an ordinary cooler could take 24 to 36 hours to do the same thing. Also, when lettuce is vacuum cooled, it prolongs the shelf life to the retailer, which makes a better quality and a better head of lettuce to the consumer.
Some of the better machines around the marsh, they're built right here by a couple of the growers that have good machine jobs, and they really put out a real nice machine, say a carrot machine. Now they're built commercially by a company, but you have to sort of rig them up to your own need. Where you'd grow 10, 15 acres of carrots now, you'd have maybe 2, 3, 4 acres of carrots back 25 years ago. That was a lot of carrots, because everything was done by hand. Back then, I'd imagine 700, 800 bushels the acre was a good yield, which it isn't now. Now you get up over 1,000 bushels, 1,500 a good acre of carrots. But different seed now, different types of carrots.
The packing plants mean a great deal to the town of Bradford. Bradford would be a pretty dead town if it wasn't that the marsh had been developed for produce purposes. We have a celery line in our plant which is a knob-long machine. Has been made by ourselves, which cuts the tops off, then run through a spraying machine to clean them. We have approximately 8 people grading the celery before it is packed in boxes. We have a lot of husbands and wives working in our plant. Their grandmother usually looks after their children, but most are Portuguese and Italian, new immigrants.
I came from Italy, and I happened to come over here because I had my girlfriend over here. She called me over, and I come over, and I like over here in Canada. And the best thing I like over here in Bradford, it's a nice town, nice, peaceful. There is another 2 brothers, Dominic and Frank. Dominic is one who could drive the lift truck, not the Tomer, and Frank is working in the stock room. My wife works with me too, and also got 2 brothers all working here too. I working here since the first day I come over in Bradford, in Canada. It's just about 15 years now. Anyway, I always say someday I would like to go in the farm business, and I have to wait to get enough money to go into, see.
I came from Portugal 6 years ago. Well, my dad has been here quite a while, so we all came over. With my mother, my brother-in-law, and I. We packed carrots, throwing in the celery, parsnips, beets, that's all. I seem to like Canada. It's a pretty nice country.
Packing started here in a big way in about 1946. Before that, our produce used to be taken to Toronto by truck to the various warehouses and to the whole St. Lawrence market. I feel that the packing plants are very important to the marsh growers. It gives them so much more time to work on their land.
It's got to be in you. You have to love it to do it. That's why I'm still here, because I love farming. I couldn't be locked up in a factory for 8 hours a day. I've tried it. You know, in the wintertime, for instance, when it was slack here, I'd go out to the city and work for 8 hours down there, and when spring comes, it warms up outside, you got to get out.
I don't know of any place that produces the quality and the quantity of crops that we do in the marsh.
Well, it's been a good life. It's been a hard life, but I can't really complain about it. I'm figuring on quitting in a year or so, but I don't know whether I will or not.
There is no better place than working on the land for a living. I can tell you that. That's the most independent life a man can ever look forward to, is working the land. And to be dependent on nature. And so many factors, you know, are there to make you sit up and take notice. And this makes also, of course, for the beautiful occupation a farmer has. He gets near to nature and therefore he gets near to God.